comment on whether or not they maintained a kind of a corn god approach to things vis-a-vis the other cultures and societies around them. So I can't comment to that. As for the idea of an existing Nazi international based in Argentina, I think you would have to look at that in a twofold way. The first would be, to my mind and the research that I've conducted thus far, I think that Argentina has long since ceased to function as more or less the headquarters for this group, wherever it may be. I think by now that it has, if it's still in existence, and I do believe personally that it is, I think by now it has managed to infiltrate itself into so many areas of human endeavor, into so many corporations, into so many bureaucracies, that it's probably rather pointless to look for a particular place as constituting its headquarters. If I were to locate a headquarters for it, I think I would probably locate it somewhere in Europe. There are indications in other people's research that it might have actually migrated or gone to Taiwan, of all places. But I do think, on the other hand, that this post-war fascist international, whatever you want to call it, definitely did exist. It was well-financed. It was well-organized. And I don't see, as yet, much evidence to suggest that it ever went out of existence. I think, quite the contrary, that there's a great deal of evidence to suggest that in the 1970s restructuring of the underground drug trade, that it played a major role in doing that. So I think the organization probably still does exist. As to where its headquarters are, again, that's anybody's guess. But I don't think Argentina.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Zoltan. Well, next we'll go into the section or topic of UFOs and ETs and the breakaway civilization. Giuseppe, you have a question?
Yes, hi, Dr. Farrell. I know you have researched extensively the Nazi Bell Project, probably more than most other people. One possible example of the fruits of their labor, as far as the project is concerned, I think, is Admiral Byrd's Operation High Jump, which led a flotilla of ships with over 4,000 troops after World War II. The expedition was to attack and rid what was left of the Nazi bases in Antarctica. As we know, they were largely defeated, but pulled back, licking their wounds. Many involved mentioned flying vehicles they could barely describe defending their bases. My imagination simply can go wild speculating how far their technology must have advanced by now. Can you give us an idea, or would you know how far their advancement has come with the Bell Project?
Well, let me back you up. I'm afraid I have to disagree a bit with the reading that you're giving the Operation High Jump, and this is very, very difficult. This operation has been used by many to maintain that the Nazis had established some sort of secret base, and usually that is accompanied by the assumption that it was some sort of secret research base. The problem here is that the verifiable information coming out of Operation High Jump, and I'm stressing the word verifiable, not the stuff that you pick up on the internet with Admiral Byrd's alleged declassified diaries and so on and so forth, but the actual verifiable stuff that appeared in El Mercurio newspaper out of Santiago. All that Admiral Byrd ever said, and it's the only quotation that I can verify, all he ever said was that the United States must prepare itself to defend itself against enemy fighters that can fly from pole to pole with tremendous speed, and that's all he said. So the assumption has been on the part of post-war Nazi researchers that Operation High Jump encountered some sort of Nazi base, that they were using all their fantastic flying saucer technology, which they were researching there, and I have to disagree with that assumption on one very, very significant point. The only technology that we have a verifiable story that gives us enough details, and this is the crucial point, that gives us enough details that we can reconstruct a putative physics for it, is the Nazi Bell story. All the other stories about Nazi Hanabu and Vril and all of this happy nonsense that you have coming out of the post-war period is coming out of precisely a neo-Nazi circle based in southern West Germany and Austria after the war. The documents that they purport to produce give you no clue as to where these things were being built. There's no provenance for the documents. There's no putative science that is talked about in these documents. You simply have a bunch of drawings of what look to be flying saucers, and that's about it. So I've tended, on the basis of the fact that you cannot take these documents and reconstruct any sort of evidentiary paper trail, that you cannot reconstruct a putative scientific reasoning behind them, and that you have these documents coming out of post-war neo-Nazi circles. I've always looked at these documents with a great deal of skepticism. So that leaves us with the Bell and with these post-war Antarctica stories. The problem there is the problem with the Bell story is the Bell, we have a case of a technology that we can reconstruct a putative engineering and scientific rationalization for. Now, if you've looked at my research, the research of Igor Vitkovsky and Nick Cook, we're all agreed that the Bell required an enormous amount of electrical power in order to operate, to such an extent that the Nazis apparently built an entire electrical power plant near the facilities, within hundreds of yards, as a matter of fact, of the facilities where the Bell was being tested. If they were doing this kind of research, therefore, in Antarctica, they would have had to have access to similar amounts of electrical power. And that, to me, is what is really the problem with these post-war Antarctica Nazi survival stories. I think it's ludicrous on that basis to assume that they had a research base there and that they were producing all of the extraordinary technologies in Antarctica. I think that it's far more likely that these technologies, if they were being produced anywhere, were being produced in Latin America, most likely at that time in Juan Perón's Argentina. If there was any sort of Nazi base in Antarctica, I think probably the best we could assume for it, under the circumstances under which the Germans were operating during the final years of World War II, was that it was at best a covert U-boat operations base. There may have been a small military resupply base and so on. So I question to this day the reading that Operation High Jump was to take out a secret Nazi research base, although I am open to the idea that we may have encountered some sort of advanced technology there that we were simply unprepared to deal with. That I have no problem with. My big problem is reading that the origin of this technology is coming from Argentina. If we're looking at Nazis, I don't think it's coming from Argentina. And I realize my answer is very complicated, but you have to be very, very careful with these post-war Nazi stories, because a lot of them are coming from neo-Nazis themselves, and you have to weigh what they're saying with other evidence. Otherwise, you've not got any corroboration. So I hope my answer makes some sort of sense.
No, thank you for clarifying the answer, actually.
Thanks, Dr. Farrell. Interestingly, you said that, especially in your latest blog, I think it was on the 26th of May, where you quoted this crazy Russian politician talking about
Vladimir Zhirinovsky, yeah.
Yeah, that can put whole continents to sleep. I mean, talking about Giuseppe's question about advanced technology, if they have that type of technology, it's pretty scary, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I forgot to answer that part of his question. You know, he asked where this technology would be today. Would they have been able to perfect it? Well, you know, I get asked that question a lot, Jules, and my answer is always the same. If we look at where the story of the Bell says that the Nazis were at the end of World War II, in other words, they had a device that actually apparently levitated on the base of some sort of field properties that it was giving off. It gave off deadly effects. It wasn't a practically flyable device, so to speak. And Nazis being Nazis, they're interested in it, obviously, ultimately for a weapon. But if you take the story as it stands and then extrapolate from that, 60 plus years since the end of World War II, well, the old statement, with enough money and manpower, where would they be today? And my feeling is, my intuition is that they would probably be very far indeed. And I've even addressed on my website in the members only area in a white paper some very strange statements of American engineers involved in American black projects that are that are, needless to say, very suggestive as to how far they might have taken some of this technology. So I think it's possible they've taken it very far.
Thank you. And just all you need to do is just get some third generation night vision goggles. But we're going to
yeah, right.
Uranus, you got a question for Dr. Farrell?
Yes. Hello. I want to start off by just saying I think that by revealing facts and evidence, what is really going on is a real counterbalance to all the social engineering going on. And I hope we can do so also in our own small way. And I want to thank you personally.
Well, thank you, Uranus. I appreciate that.
Now to my question. In your work, you've set out to inquire and research into human technological capabilities, notably
Yes.
Nazi technology.
Right.
And have revealed some compelling results, that there is exotic and off-the-books human and terrestrial technology that far exceeds what the public is told. To my mind, you have rightly separated UFOs and ETs, as they have somehow become associated together, which does not help with the investigation of either.
Right.
And recently, in one of the members' videos on your website, you posed a question about UFOs. Is the physics sufficient to compel to the idea that UFOs be extraterrestrial? And you answered it, in most cases, it is no. Could you address these issues taking into consideration such areas as social engineering, possible government or black ops agendas, and the potential technologies that could account for terrestrial UFOs? And finally, what research and kinds of discernment would you like to see take place in the area of ufology?
Well, I'm writing a book right now where I'm getting into the relationship of social engineering and some of these technologies, because this, again, is a story that is very fascinating, and it's not, in my opinion, Uranus, it's not very well understood. I don't think that there's been sufficient attention brought to it. And that said, let me say one more thing. I am not, and never have been, philosophically opposed to the existence of ETs, nor even to the idea that some UFOs might represent some sort of extraterrestrial technology, or conversely some sort of interdimensional technology. I'm not opposed to those ideas at all. I think anyone who's read the research of Dr. Jacques Vallée would have to conclude, coming away from it, that